Hey everybody, welcome. It's John Garcia from Knotfest here again, and today I am being joined by Zach and Anthony from the Chicago-based prog metalers Without Waves. Gentlemen, welcome. Pulse on the Maggots. How you doing today?
Thank you for having us. Doing well.
Doing good, man. Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic. Cool, Zach. As we talked about, we'll keep this interview going just as long as possible to keep you from having to go back to work and all that good stuff. So, yeah, I'm curious. It has been about 5 years since your last record, Lunar, came out. You had a little bit of time between your debut and the sophomore album as well. Obviously, a lot has happened between when that record came out and when Comedian is coming out as well. I'm curious as far as like when did you guys really start to kind of pivot to a creative album cycle after all the touring and writing of the last album? And what were your initial thoughts and ideas on that, and how that might have changed with a global pandemic slicing the time right in the middle of that?
Absolutely. We started recording, writing, and then, of course, recording the record pre-pandemic. We were actually about to start, I think, mixing right when lockdown happened. And so, rather than, I guess kind of like rush it out and kind of get it done as quickly as possible, at that point, with the way things were looking, we were like, okay, maybe we have a little bit more time to, kind of work on this, and then we'll just kind of see how the next year rolls out. And here we are in 2022 releasing the record. So
Yeah, I don't think there was any real point where we pivoted from, say, touring to writing mode. Like, we basically always practice 2 to 3 times a week. We just have to. It's what we do. It's what we've been doing forever. So we're kind of almost always in a state of writing. Like, it takes us a while usually, and yeah, just at a certain point, we kind of realized, like, oh, this is a full record. Yeah, probably record this.
Amazing. So, did any of the, and I guess we'll get into this a little bit later because I know that there are a lot of lyrical themes that are very timely on this record. But did any of that change, I guess, as far as like the direction of this album was going one way, but then even though you already were writing and stuff like that because you had a lot of time, maybe you started playing with things that you didn't. Did that happen at all?
I think the pandemic happening the way that it did, and how it affected kind of everyone collectively, I'd say there's some energies from that for sure that I think definitely kind of inserted themselves in, as far as lyrical content as a whole, not necessarily stemmed from that specific event per se, but certainly as far as some of the themes are concerned, is it's a very anxiety laced record, and in combination with some of the more I guess macro ways of looking at things as far as our shared experience, and then also some personal things too. It's kind of all kind of wrapped up into one there. So
Yeah, anxiety, I think, is probably the word of the last 2 years for me, at least
yeah.
personally, right? Just not knowing what's going on or how long things are going to go, or just really anything that is going on. So, and I think you could hear that a little bit. And I mean, the singles that you guys released, as far as being like eclectic and diverse and everything like that. I mean, even just in Good Grief, right, with the panic chords and that, and the really frenetic way that plays. I as a listener can definitely feel that, and I'm interested to dig in more. So speaking of anxiety and playing together and stuff like that, like you guys obviously have been in a band for a really long time. And it sounds like you've known each other for even longer than you guys have played in a band together. I'm curious how the relationship of the four of you guys kind of helped through the past couple of years and helped write this album that you guys have.
Boy, I mean, in one way, shape, or another. God, how long have we been playing together for?
Without Waves since 2010, but then playing together since we were what, 16, right? I think we're at 20 years. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I think the friendship is really kind of what it all still tends to boil down to. And I think that because we know each other so well, that gives us the liberty to kind of be extremely honest with our songwriting,
Mm.
with our musical approach. Like, as long as, like, it doesn't really matter what kind of idea anyone walks into the room with. Like, if we all like it, that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, and that actually leads me perfectly to the next question that I had, which is just about the music itself. And like, as you guys strike me as a band that's not really afraid to push boundaries, combine genres, just do weird things and see how they work together. I'm like, what separates in your mind, and this is probably very different, but I like asking artists this, right? Because like, what separates in your guys' mind a without waves like riff song idea, something that you're like, oh, this is going to go on the album, versus something that maybe is going to sit around in a riff graveyard or not get used ever again?
I think ultimately it comes down to, um, I mean, we hold ourselves to a pretty high standard personally, as far as like, there's nothing that we can't bring to the band, but generally, if we're bringing something to the band, it is deemed as worthy and more so honest. I think honesty is an extremely important part of whatever we're doing artistically. I mean, if you're not being honest with yourself or with your audience, there's not really a point to it, in my view, at least. So I think anything that we brought in there, you know, and like Zach was saying too, we've been playing together long enough that we also allow for each other to experiment, you know, and even if something's not fully fleshed out or not fully like realized, or even if there's a lack of confidence initially with something, generally, you know, we'll allow that to kind of flourish. And if it does, great. If it doesn't, then it wasn't meant to be.
Absolutely. And I mean, we've had riffs that were written years ago, and then they'll just come back like, oh, this is where that goes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like the very last riff on our last single, Seven. That riff was so old that I had actually forgotten that I wrote it, and I thought that Anthony wrote it, but I think it was his idea to put it there.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that's how the end of that song came together.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always fascinating to me. Because you know, talking to a lot of different artists, everybody does their own thing, their own way, right? Some just completely start fresh. I've talked to several that have just boatloads of hard drives with old riffs that they'll kind of go into and look and see. And I always think that that's so interesting, given how, you know, where you might have been at one point, you know, 5-10 years ago, however long, and how that morphs and changes and everything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think that that's really cool. I didn't really have a question or anything like that there. Just more along the lines of the artistic mind is always incredible to me, to being like, here's a riff from 10 years ago that for some reason I thought sucked then, but kept it around, and now it's on an album from whenever it
Yeah,
is.
yeah. Things kind of circle back sometimes, and I think Zach has kind of mentioned this before. Anything that you put out there or create is a time capsule, I think, of who you are or what your emotional state is, or at least, you know, coming from a, you know, I think some of the ways in which we write music, you know, certainly a lot of our emotion is tied into that. And so there are times where, you know, you kind of, whether it's in the room when we're rehearsing or whether we're kind of on our own, just kind of working on stuff, you want to make sure you catch whatever lightning is in the bottle, right? You know, and you never know if that'll, you know, circle back or not, you know?
Yeah, and to that point, has there been anything, whether through this writing cycle or just in the past, that you guys have started doing and you're like, well, this is almost way too left field for us, so we're not even going to touch it? Is there anything that's just been like too weird or too left of center for Without Waves when you're writing?
I don't think we've ever, I don't think we've ever passed on a good idea because of something like that. But especially in writing comedian and realizing it, there were a couple bridges that we had to cross that we were a little bit unsure of. I think,
Mm-hmm.
for instance, there's a song on the new record called "Worlds Apart," and the majority of that song does not have drums on it.
Mm.
It's just how that song worked out. It's a little more singer songwritery. But once we all got in a room and tried it with drums, tried it without, like even Gary, our drummer, like everyone agreed, like, no, it's better, more, it's better stripped down. And so
Yeah.
that's what we went with. But I think at least I was a little bit apprehensive for it at first.
Mm.
Just, yeah, what are we gonna do? live, like something so minimalistic. But that's what felt right, so that's what's on the record.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm gonna shit my pants live every time I have to play that alone.
Dude, that's all you.
Gary's gonna go get a soda or something,
Yeah,
just hang
yeah.
back, take his 15.
Mhm.
No, that's really incredible, and I guess in the prosthetic records write up of this, you guys mentioned this album Comedian could be on a record shelf for anybody who likes Dillinger Escape Plan to Devin Townsend, Gojira, Porcupine Tree. I'm curious. I always like asking this. Was there anything that you were influenced by in this writing cycle that may not have been that I guess may have been a surprise, or that may not have been too evident to fans of your band in the past?
Hmm.
Uh,
I could preempt. I'll say this. One of the best answers I got from this was a synthwave band who does like synthwave and horror, and the dude was like, "Bro, I've been listening to a lot of Sabaton lately." And I was like, "Oh, okay."
I guess, influences do come from places that you'd not expect. I don't know, Zach, can you think of anything in particular that you were listening to while we were creating this?
yeah, actually, one big shift for me musically is over the writing process, I got really into a minimalist composer named Arvo Pärt.
Mm.
He's out of Estonia, and his stuff almost sounds like Gregorian chant influenced, but it's very stripped back, very minimalistic. And I don't know, if a lot of people in the metal community are aware of them. Some of them are. That's definitely had an influence on me, and it's apparent at a couple little spots in the record. But
Yeah, I just thought of it. I think I was listening to a lot of Scott Stapp's solo records. That's what I was listening to primarily.
Big shout right there.
Yeah, dude, that guy can sing.
Yeah. Speaking of singing, although this has nothing to do with that, actually, I'm curious. Tell me about the idea and the thought process behind the album art with the flamingos opening their like little sacks to feed their young or whatever. I think that's what it is. Very striking. Pink isn't used on a whole lot of album covers, I don't think. But what was the thought process and the idea behind the cover that you guys went with?
well, I think to a large degree we wanted to find an image that so the record deals a lot with perspective, intent, and relativity, and we were struggling for a little while to find just what could actually capture that.
Mm.
And I had seen that video when it first went viral, and then once it came back across my radar, showed it to Anthony, and it just seemed perfect because we have a scene there that looks like an act of violence, but actually it's an act of nourishment,
Mm.
and it's just all about intent, and it can be interpreted either way. So the fact that we were able to stumble across something like that and have those ideas be represented and represented really well without having to go to an artist and just, hey, can you make something that checks off those boxes from scratch? Like, let's go with the flamingos.
Anthony, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the cover art, I love it. I love it because it inherently looks like something rather grisly and off-putting. But then, like Zach said, it is that's actually crop milk. It's a way for that little chickling to be nourished and whatnot, and also too just the juxtaposition of how off-putting it looks, but also the colors are very vibrant. That's something that I really liked, and again, we've always kind of done our own thing, and it's nice having an album that sort of subtly nods at that, I guess. So.
Yeah, and you mentioned it. I mean, the colors pop and it stands out. And I guess one of the things for me is that you wouldn't be able to tell, like, what kind of record this is just from looking at it, right? Which provides its own little bit of intrigue to it, right? Because I mean, it could be anything from like indie to synthwave to who knows what, right? Which I think is really cool, right? Especially considering, the way that you guys put music together, which is also in its way like not very I don't say that you guys would have a genre or anything like that, as far as you just take a lot of different things and put it in a package and get it out there, which leads me, I guess, to my final question, which is you guys have talked a little bit, especially on this album cycle, about kind of the different ways to interpret the term progressive or prog or anything like that. I'm curious what that means to you, because right, I mean, when you ask, some people could think of like Dream Theater or Symphony X as far as prog. Some people could think of maybe as like Animals as Leaders, right? There's a whole huge umbrella that prog falls into, and it sounds like you guys like to kind of poke at like everything on that. So what does that term mean for you, and in the bounds of Without Waves?
Ooh, that's a little bit tough. Like, to an extent, I almost feel like we've tried to move away from that moniker, but
Okay.
we haven't found anything more accurate. Once upon it, we've tried a little bit using the term post-progressive, but
Mm-hmm.
that seems it gets a little convoluted at that point. Um, God, what does it actually mean to us? I know, Anthony, you want to rescue me here?
Um, I, like Zach said, it's a label that I think is kind of the only thing that we can kind of like apply towards. I guess it's just like you were saying, it's an amalgamation of a lot of those different influences, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've never in particular liked the word prog, or if I have to choose, I prefer progressive. Prog sometimes comes across maybe a little bit cheesier in a way,
Sure.
depending on the context and stuff like that. And I don't feel like we're that, but in general, what it means to us, yeah, I guess it's a catch-all for everything that we do, and it's the only term that we know of now that best describes what we are. Maybe we'll figure out a word or a phrase in the next couple of years, or something will develop naturally somewhere on Reddit, and then it'll catch fire or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm curious about it just because like a lot of bands over the last couple of years are really starting to dive into a really undefinable, uncharacterizable kind of. It's just like their music, right? Like your label mates in Four Stroke Baron, I think, fall in that
Totally.
realm, right?
Yeah.
We did a first listen a couple of months or about a month ago with Rollo Tomasi from
Mhm.
UK, who are very
Yeah.
much in that, right? They have some prog elements, but they also have some post and metal, like all of this other stuff. So it's like I agree, Anthony. Like, and I was literally thinking that as you were saying that, as far as like,
Yeah.
well, it's hard to describe what's going on like in the moment. Maybe in a little while we'll figure it out. But either way, like, however it is, it's enjoyable and it's good to listen to. So don't worry about
Awesome.
them labels. I mean, I know you don't. Just like keep continuing to make the music. So as we're recording this, we still have a couple of days before Comedian comes out. Most likely, the people that are watching this now, the album's already come out and it's out into the world. Congratulations, fellas! What would you like people to take away from this album as they're listening to it?
I uh, we put a lot of hard work into it. We put a lot of ourselves into it. I just want anyone listening to it to get whatever they can out of it. Certainly, like, you hope anything that you put out there artistically will resonate with people, just in a way where they feel connected. And I feel like we've done a good job of putting this record into a position where a lot of people out there with a wide variety of different musical tastes um, may end up finding something on there that really resonates with them. So
Absolutely. And I kind of feel like to a certain extent, like once it's out, it's almost no longer ours.
yeah.
Mm.
Like, I think people are going to take it and they're going to identify with it in their own ways. I hope.
Mm.
Like, my only real hope is just that just take a bite, try it, maybe you'll like it.
Yeah.
There you go. Words of wisdom from Zach. Zach Anthony, thank you so much for taking the time out of your days to join us today. Everybody, Without Waves, their newest album, Comedian, is out on March 18th via Prosthetic Records. Whether that's in the future for you, in the past, whatever it is, go stream the album. Pick it up right now. Gentlemen, thanks again for joining us today.
Thank
Awesome.
you. Appreciate it. Take care.
You too.